Hi, so I create modular objects, and the premise of like my practice, I guess, is that through building your own, you can build your own social space and work together and better social interactions by building your own space within public spaces. And so working with Bridge of Wear, I'm working with Bridge of Wear and Muirhead Leather on this project. And they are a sustainably led leather company who all their leather is traceable from the UK and Ireland, and this was really important as well, part of conversation, because we were looking at the life cycle of leather and how to, I guess, best display the leather in this context and be able to tell it in a new context. And so I guess you've got modular seating installation here and the two pieces here, and it's placed on a brick plinth because Bridge of Wear are able to convert all the waste from their raw hides into energy, food products, beauty products, and also any of the waste left over from that is then converted, so the ash that's left over from that
I think that's everyone? I think that's everyone. Is it four?
I don't know.
Yeah, I've just Thank you for being here as well. Yeah, like Adonis said, my practice really stems from my research actually. My research looks at West African craft rituals, craft cultures, but also the material cultures which communities in West Africa use to survive on a daily basis, but I'm specifically interested in the domestic. But the domestic as a sort of everyday, quotidian thing that people do just to survive, not necessarily the glamorous side of it, but just practices and rituals that people do. And I'm really interested in this idea of reimagining these daily practices as something to be seen as ritual, as something to be celebrated. So really what Communion is the third piece in line of a series of research entitled Artifacts of Ritual. And what this piece is trying to do is to reimagine the everyday act of pounding fufu, which is a food in West Africa, specifically Ghana. And what it is basically cassava and plantain pounded in a large mortar and pestle. And one person sits down, kneading a mixture, and the other person basically uses the stick and pounds. And I've always grown up in Ghana, I've always viewed this as performance, actually. I've always viewed it.
The raw origins of a diaspora. How this project came along, I looked at my family DNA and I noticed that there's certain parts of Africa where my DNA is from, which I didn't realize before. Originally, I just thought I was from Ghana and Nigeria. And because the project's called Origins, I thought it'd be more of an interesting way of actually looking at the family DNA. So for these pots, they kind of symbolize the shapes of the certain regions. And what actually started the project is that I looked at this pot here that's actually from Jamaica. It's called the Yaba pot. And what I found with that project is that it kind of connected Jamaicans to West Africa when I was doing my research and stuff like that. And it was kind of like the early settlers, the early people that came over from Africa. And so basically it went from the Yaba pot to the Dutchy pot, so that really symbolizes the kind of like Jamaican culture. And also in Jamaica there's a lot of aluminium, so when you go to Jamaica and you look at the soil, that's actually used for like making aluminium, so that's a national dish, kind of like for food and stuff like that.
myself in the museum, and that's how I noticed that there are these barriers everywhere, and the V&A staff actually use this to herd people out of the museum at the end of the day. And I just found it's really interesting how these barriers, they are not like this metal barricades. They are only just kind of like a social construct, like you can go through, but people choose not to because they are civilized. So yeah, and my practice has always been studying everyday artifacts, so that's how I kind of lucked down to this barrier item. And then I visited the company of this product. They are based in Milton Keynes, and that's when the conversation started to get interesting, because basically they are a company of all this, because they are all retractable, so the whole ring structure will distort, and that kind of like represents like how yeah, I just want to shed light on all this everyday boundaries in our everyday life, that I just propose a question like, what is a border, what is boundary, what is barrier, and the answer is open to interpretation for all of these.
Hi everyone, my name is Arjun Singh, and this is my piece called Sitting with Your Virtues and Vices. So this project was basically an exploration into Sikh architecture, spirituality and craft. And it was asking these questions about the idea of contemplation and prayer and meditation, and how do you sort of talk about this through a piece of furniture. So we live in a time which is quite like fast-paced, and we are constantly sort of having an internal conversation with ourselves. I thought of exploring this through a spiritual route, which is looking at like Sikh values and teachings, and one of them that stood out was the 5 vices and virtues in Sikhism. And whilst I was doing research around the spirituality side, I was also looking at Sikh architecture and looking at different forms, such as like questioning things that people don't really look at, like the domes that you find, the archways, the meaning behind them. And fortunately, through my research, I was learning a lot of hidden knowledge, and brought that together to sort of create this piece. And I built up a narrative which was basically, it's so easy to fall into your vices, but it takes time to climb into your virtues. And that's basically what the bench sort of symbolizes in that way.